Now, obviously, as you're dropping views on your sheets here, all right, is, as you look on your left, right, we only have one level one floor plan, we only have one level two floor plan, and so on, all right? And what Revit does is it only allows you to place a view onto a sheet once. So you can't place level one floor plan onto sheet A101. If you had sheet A102, you can't then go and place, level one floor plan on that, all right? So what you have to do within Revit when you start to think about um, views and creating sheets and creating construction documents, all right, is the same way that we duplicate wall types, all right, and window types and door types, is we have to go through and we have to duplicate our views, all right, and we can do the same thing of doing that as we do with all of our types, all right. So if we right click on any of our views over here, all right, and go up, you can see you have duplicate view, all right, and you have a duplicate, you have duplicate with detailing, and you have duplicate as a dependent, all right. Now, what duplicate as a dependent is essentially if you have a view that you want to repeat over and over and over again on multiple sheets, all right, so they're all going to end up being the same, but let's say you have a plan that you end up making look like a key plan, right, and you want to put that on multiple sheets, but like I said, you can obviously only place one view on one sheet. So what you might do is actually create a duplicate as a dependent. So each one of those views that you create as a dependent, so that main view that you basically has is what's called the parent view, right? When you make a change to that, it makes a change to all the other views and basically copies it, right? So that kind of allows you to be able to place, the exact same view on multiple sheets. All right. So again, something like a key plan is where you might want to use that. Okay. But with duplicate and duplicate with detailing, right? The differences between the two is if you click and duplicate level one here, okay, that basically copies that level one plan, all right? But you'll notice that all of the 2D annotations are gone, okay? And that is because I was mentioning before is that, when you're putting in dimensions and all those overrides, as those settings are for that view, all right? So if you go to any other view, all right, they're completely different. So think of them as kind of instance properties, all right? You're overriding the instance properties of that view, okay? And so between the level one and the level one copy, right on the left, as you can see, we have that, and then we did a regular duplicate, all right? And all those 2D details are gone, all right? And so that's what the typical duplicate does, is it copies your level one, all right? But none of those 2D elements kind of go around along with it, okay? Now, if for some reason we wanted those to come with it, all right, if you did a duplicate view with detailing, okay, you can see that now the copy two, what we did was duplicate with detailing. So it basically took those 2D details and it copied it over. All right, so that's kind of the difference between the two, is that a regular duplicate doesn't copy over the 2D details. The duplicate with detailing does. All right. So as I was mentioning, is by duplicating multiple level one floor plans, right, that means we can do multiple level one floor plans that show different things, right? So we might have a level one floor plan that we have that just shows all dimensions, right? We have a dimension plan, okay? And depending on the project we're doing, okay, if it's a house or let's say it's some small kind of multi-unit family housing, is you may have to show kind of a fire exit plan. All right, so you might be able to go and make a level one exit fire exit plan, all right, and make a copy of it. And now instead of having all these dimensions, right, is you might have it very simple where you override the walls so they're all pochaded in black, right, and then you use kind of your 2D detail lines, and you can draw arrows and draw kind of directions for a fire egress plan out of the building, right? So there's a whole host of different um, drawings that you may want to create just with level one floor plan itself, right? The same goes for level two and level three. So, the ability to kind of duplicate these things and kind of know the relation of, um, having your 2D details and your view settings live only in the view you have open, all right, is important to know because as you go and, modify views and create all your different views for, your construction documents, all right, you're going to want to know how those work. Okay. And aside from just duplicating views here and the settings that go along with them, all right, is obviously as you start to duplicate views, right, in the left side here in your project browser, is you have level 1, you have level 1 copy 1 now, you have level 1 copy 2, all right, is I would recommend is right from the start, all right, is one of the things that you want to do for setup, all right, when you start to create more views and start to create everything, is kind of develop for yourself a nomenclature that you're going to be able to follow, all right. And generally speaking, if you're in an office, there's probably already a nomenclature that you're going to want to follow with view naming and things like that. So that way, if multiple people are working on the same project and have to go into it, they have an idea of what plans go where. So a lot of times, if this level 1 floor plan here, if this is the floor plan that goes on sheet A101, right? A lot of times people will rename this view, A101 floor plan or anything like that, right? So they'll rename it so that they know what the plan actually has to do with, right? And what I also recommend is when you go through here, right, and with your level 1s and level 2s and all this, right, is that you always have one level, your default floor plans that you start with, right? So for instance, before we had any of these copies here, right, if I just go and delete these for a second, all right, so we had the default level 1 floor plan, level 2 floor plan, right, is when you first have these here, is I always recommend that you keep at least your default views and leave them as is, right? So as you're going and you can build in them and change them around or anything like that. But I always recommend that you have one that you leave all the default view settings alone. You don't put any annotations in it. You don't do anything with it, right? That being is because, if you think about your level 1 floor plans here, is the view settings for, your dimensioning plans are going to be vastly different from any of your diagrammatic plans that you're going to want to look at, right? Like if you're going and highlighting different areas as, this is living space, this is kind of storage space and so on, and kind of doing some program managing with it, the view settings that you're going to want for them are going to be vastly different. So what I always recommend is that you always keep your default views here, so level 1, level 2, or whatever, and as you start to create a view that is going to go on a sheet, for instance, so let's say, okay, um, if I had all these, um, dimensions here, right, we took out all the tags, right, just give me a moment here, take out all the tags, everything like that, right, so there's no tags, none of the text notes, anything like that, right? And I won't delete all of them, but let's just say, we had no tags here, no annotations at all, right? Before we put any 2D details on here, as we keep this as our default and say, okay, this is ground zero, this is kind of where, kind of the default view is, right? And let's say, okay, well, I want to go ahead and put, a 3D or a dimension plan together now, right? Is I would recommend right off the bat is right clicking and duplicating this, right? And where it says, instead of level 1 copy 1, is I would rename this in the plan um, properties, all right, which is level 1 copy 1, is I would name it something so you know what's going on. So if it's level 1, name it level 1, dimensions, okay? So that way, not only do you know what's going on with it, all right, but in the project browser, you know what it is as well, all right? And what's also nice is when you have level 1 dimensions, if you label these for whatever sheet they're on, is it also reminds you that these are on a sheet, right? So that if down the road you have, you create a bunch of sheets and you have views that are sitting there in the sheets, right? And someone else comes into this project and says, okay, I need a view that I'm going to screw around with and change some things up in. They don't come into one of your views that's labeled as, A101, level 1 sheet A101, because they know that's on a sheet already, and that's all set up perfectly so that it prints out nicely, right? You know, for someone to come in and accidentally open up, level 1, let's say, and maybe they don't know that it's on a sheet, is they'll come in, maybe they change your view settings around, maybe they throw some more dimensions in there, And without realizing it, they've now screwed up the view that's sitting on your sheet. And so the next time you print it or go to print, all right, you now have to go back and rechange all those settings and delete anything that they added or anything like that, right? So it's always kind of best practice to make sure you kind of name these with something so that you know what's going on with them, all right? And it ends up just being a lot easier on you kind of down the road, and as well as working in any sort of office environment with multiple people. All right, so yeah, as I was saying, with the naming and the nomenclature, really just kind of develop yourself something so that down the road all of your different views, and you can look at it in your project browser and know, okay, this view is for this view is for that, right? It kind of saves you a little heartbreak down the road as well. As you can imagine, if you have multiple level ones, multiple level twos, and so on, things can get a little bit confusing. All right. Same with your elevations. You can see that the default naming gets a little bit confusing. Elevation 1A, C, D. A lot of times if you look at it, you're going to kind of be like, where is this exactly? So, you're probably going to want to rename this something other than elevation 1A. Maybe interior elevation or kitchen elevation, whatever it may be, right? Just something so that you have an idea of what's going on with it. And like I said, if you're in a situation where you have multiple people in the office who are working on the same thing, they can look at it as well and know what's going on. All right. So going back to the sheet quickly. All right. So again, if we have our sheet here, all right, your little blocks on the side, right, or sorry, not on the side, but your kind of title lines on the bottom here, right? If you select the view, you can see you can drag that back and forth, right, as well as the position of it, right, where you actually want that position to be. And if you select it, okay, you can move that around. All right.